Hello, Suns fans, and welcome back to the GCSUNScast. It's been an uncertain time in the world over the last few weeks since our last show, but we are back. We are going to have a big chat about the problems going on at the moment in relation to the Gold Coast Suns and AFL football. But before we do, I'm your host Shane. Joining me is Tom, and welcome to the show, Tom.
Yes, Shane. Absolutely agree with everything you said just now. And it's not just about footy, is it? It's about people's lives and livelihoods. And, we can't just have that, nice old release this weekend by going to watch our favourite team play. We just have to sit at home and wait for the latest Twitter updates or the latest afl.com.au breaking news and that kind of stuff, as well as, keeping abreast of things for our own families and all the rest of it. So, yeah, interesting times. But, I think our girls team gave us something to cheer about this weekend. What do you reckon about that game?
Yeah, it was a great game. So, before we jump into all the coronavirus stuff and then the results from the AFLW, I just want to give a quick shout out to our Old Soul Patreon donors, Jack Stad, Dale Snelling, Paul Vosti, Tom Kim, Brody Burgess, Kate Kelland, Chris Moore, Robbie Fiorini, Tim and James Wood. Thanks for all your support, guys. If you'd like to help support the show, head on over to patreon.com/GCSUNScast and donate there. Become an Old Soul Patreon donor and support the GC Sunscast. Now, the AFLW was played on the weekend. It was one of the first games without crowds after the recent announcements by the AFL and the government. So, without going into all the background stuff with that, it was a great game of football to watch. The Gold Coast Suns defeated the West Coast Eagles by 25 points, 5 goals, 33 to West Coast Eagles, 1 goal to 8. And Kalinda Howarth was woman of the match with 4 goals, and she had a sensational performance, and she's a true finisher. She models her game after Buddy Franklin, and I could see in that game just exactly where she gets it from.
Yeah, well, exactly. She can lead up as the tall forward. Took a great mark right at the end of the game there, and kicked a goal from a fair distance out that most players, no matter which competition they're playing in, would have a bit of trouble at that distance, and she just wasn't ever in any doubt. She's got a terrific record of shots on goal for this year. She has kicked a few behinds, but not many. She's kicked a lot of goals for a 20-year-old. Amazing. And the Lions couldn't even see their way to giving her a start last year. That just amazes me because they didn't go that well themselves. That was amazing. But look, I tell you what I loved about the game was the forward line is getting it together. They're getting combinations now. They've been able to get scores on the board, but it's kind of been, wave after wave of just, forward pressure, and finally, something will happen and someone will make something happen from nothing. But what I've been loving watching is, Jordan Hickey had a go up forward, and I thought that took a good West Coast defender away from Kindy. So that was sort of a good combo. And Hickey kicked a goal of her own, which was her first in her career. But Paige Parker just seemed to be getting it out in space and those deliveries inside 50 to set up Kindy. They were just amazing. And Britt Perry's the other one. Those forwards, Britt took the mark of the year in the middle, just, total courage and just smashed it. And yeah, just loving seeing that. I mean, I could go through the whole team, but those forwards, they're capable of probably a bigger score than that. But West Coast, even though they're a new team and they're lowly, they were tough. They were hard at it.
Yeah, they were. It was a very bruising game. You mentioned Britt Perry's mark. I just want to give a shout out. You can go and vote for Britt Perry's mark as Mark of the Year over on the AFLW website and the Suns website. So get on over to that. The game got off to a really physical start, and I got quite worried early on, especially when Lauren Bella was taken off the ground. She looked to be in a lot of pain, and I thought, this isn't good for our dominant big girl. in the middle of the ground who has such an influence on the games to be in that much pain, yet she was a trooper and she came back out and played out the rest of the game. So it must have just been a bit of a niggle that caused a hell of a lot of pain for her.
Well, you saw the opposition player come in with the elbow right into the sort of the spine between the shoulder blades. So I imagine she was in a bit of trauma because if you get hit in the spine, your whole body just feels in shock and yeah, she was in quite a bit of pain. But testament to Taylor Smith in her debut, she sort of stood in and supported in that backup chop out ruck role. So it was, and I think that enabled Lauren to sort of take the time she needed, and she came back into the game, didn't she, Lauren?
Yeah, she did.
Like it took her a while, but then she got her momentum and she became dominant again in the hit outs.
Yeah, she did, and I think it was just a really well-rounded team performance, and Lauren Bella played a part in that. So did Paige Parker. And Yorston as well, and Stanton. So they all played a great game, but in the end, it was the finishing efforts of Kindy that was able to just deliver the win for the Suns. She was the difference in the end, and it was her. She was kicking goals that were snapshots, not only from angles that most of the girls have missed, but from distances as well, like the 30 to 40 meter range, where you see a lot of set shots for goal not make it or miss, and she was just snapping them around her body, and it was going right between the big sticks. So that was just really impressive to see that.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the way that she can get on the ball, like, it goes so high as well, and that difficult kicks to get straight because they bend so much in the air. So one of the things that we're not really getting the benefit of the camera angles, because they tend to only go with a couple of angles in the AFLW. But if you were in the crowd and standing sort of behind that with that angle view, I mean, that ball's going to come around sort of 5-6 metres on the journey, and it goes up in the air, sort of goalpost, over the goalpost height. But she's so confident with it and so accurate, deadly accurate. But you know what? The fifth goal that she didn't score, she did that beautiful show and go and set off the hand pass that then set up the goal. So, she's where the points are going to come from. But she's not going to be the only goal kicker because she's not selfish with it. She'll go up the ground and stuff. Can't rave about her enough. And if she wasn't the woman of the match, Katie Sermon was bloody fantastic in the midfield. So, we've got good forwards. She doesn't need to be there anymore. She can go up the guts and, 20 possessions for her. But she was hand passing to advantage, and that was really keeping the run going. And welcome back to a few players who, like Hannah Dunn, who've been out injured for a while. So, I reckon that's our strongest side. Obviously we've got a good list, and they're all healthy now. So round 7, there's 30 players to choose from. So even from a winning team, we might see some debuts, or we might see players returning, or an unchanged team. But we don't know. It's exciting.
Well, the win put them in 4th position in their conference on the ladder, and they're in a precarious position, 4 points behind Brisbane, who they had that draw with earlier in the season.
Yeah.
And they're going to need to, no, let's not even go there, because the season,
it's a pretty simple equation.
As of the moment, next week is in doubt. There is no guarantee the AFLW will continue on this season based on the coronavirus issues the country is facing. But
that's true.
The AFLW...
If the Suns keep winning, then the chances are. But if there's no games, then there's no...
The AFLW have come out and said that the players have voted. They'd prefer a 8-week final series spread... 8-team final series spread over 3 weeks, which could start as early as this weekend. Now, being the 8 teams... is going to be 4 from Conference A and 4 from Conference B. The Gold Coast Suns would just sneak into it. So the Gold Coast Suns could play their first ever finals game as early as this weekend.
Could be another Q clash coming, Shane.
Maybe. I'm not sure how they do it. 3 weeks, 8 teams. I would say every game would be an elimination game, which means they might do the old system where first will play fourth and so on, which probably doesn't mean Gold Coast will play Brisbane, who are sitting third in Conference B at the moment. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens, and that's going to be announced tomorrow by the AFL, along with the decision on whether round 1 for the men's will go ahead. Now, moving on, since our last episode, the Suns men's had a game against Adelaide as the last of the Marsh series, and we saw a very similar Suns side to what we saw in the first week against Geelong. And the difference, I think, this time is the opposition was there. Geelong didn't take that game seriously, and I have doubts that they took any of that Marsh series games seriously, because I watched the Essendon one, and they just didn't see... They seemed to be taking... or just enjoying playing footy, not really worried about the result. But Adelaide took it up to the Suns.
Game styles too.
And Adelaide took it up to the Suns, and even got back in front within minutes to go. But unlikely hero Jordan Murdoch kicked 2 goals and put the Suns in front for a 9-goal-17, 71 to 9-goals-10, 64-point win. So that was 7 points. And it was just a pleasing effort. We saw the two-way running that we loved in that Geelong game. There were lapses of concentration in the middle of that game, but I think that's more attributed to the opposition midfield getting on top. And it's a sign of things to come. Now, everyone's saying Adelaide's not great, but it's still a nucleus of the same side that pushed into finals a couple of years ago. So I wouldn't be writing Adelaide off just yet. I was really happy with that result.
Look, their team that they named was a strong team because they've had such attrition, right? So they had so many players to leave. I think it's like 10 players who'd been at the club for some time. They fielded 12 players from that grand final side, which sounds like a lot, but in 2.5 years, that's a lot of players to not be playing at the club anymore. So they put together a strong outfit. It won't be their round 1 outfit, but it'll be pretty close. And the strength of their midfield, I mean, they're not that fast, so we kind of got on top of them in that area, but they went through us when they wanted to at will, and they were scoring coast to coast goals, weren't they? So we've got a lot of improvement to make. My criticism of our team was the forward pressure wasn't quite there for the 4 quarters, and the team that I'm looking at, that my best 22 for round 1 has a lot more forward pressure. So I think, and when Sexton went off injured, that the momentum slowed down. So I don't think it's a long-term problem for us. I think it's a good problem to have, because we know that our game gets better when we have excellent forward pressure. So that's what if there's a game this week, that's what I'll be looking for. Is I'm not too worried about the defence, whoever they name. I think the defensive structure is there with the 2 jacks getting the rebound 50. But anyway, we'll talk about that. But yeah, just to round up my thoughts on the Crows game, I was really hoping that the team would get it together to come back and get over the line and just show that they wanted to win it for the fans, and they did. So that was just really pleasing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. You mentioned Alex Sexton with the injury. So he has suffered a hamstring injury and will likely miss 2 to 3 weeks. He's in a race against time to be fit for round 1 this week. I'm not so concerned about that. I feel like we've got players like Rankin sitting in the sidelines that can is waiting for a spot in that side. So I think we could quite easily cover the Sexton injury. It's not ideal, but certainly manageable. And it looks like Harbrow and Hanley aren't going to come up for round one, does it?
Which is a hell of a lot of experience. So if Sexton, Hanley, and Harbrow and Thompson were to miss, then that's that's 500 or 600 games of experience. So it begs the question: who replaces them? Is it next man up, or do we see someone like a Murdoch come in because we need experience. We need someone who can not only be classy enough to do it, but will be able to replace that experience and leadership, because we've got a young guy like, say, Sharp could come in and replace Hanley, but Sharp's never played a game before, so he might be flashy, he might be good, but he might also do a few things that lose the game for us. So yes, it's tough. I'd like to see a genuine injury list, because there are only sort of 5 or 6 people who we know are injured, but there's another 5 or 6.
Yeah, so there's quite a few injuries, but we can cover that. I think the sides played well enough in the Marsh Series games to cover those injuries. Moving on, we've got some signings. We've been talking about these for a number of weeks now, and they have come to fruition with the club announcing Sam Collins and Braden Fiorini have re-signed with the club for, I think Collins is 2 years and Fiorini is 3 years.
Yeah, it's terrific. I mean, they're both obviously signed for this year, so the signings could have come at any time. But our information has always been that Braden in particular is always going to re-sign, and it only came down to negotiations with player management and the club, and obviously timing. The club wanted to be able to get on the front foot and announce some good news on the season's eve. So great.
Yep.
We've kind of been resigned to it for months, haven't we?
And there's a lot of rumours floating about. There are more signings on its way, so we're looking forward to that news when the club decides to announce it. All right, well, this gets us into probably the bulk of the chat for the episode, which is going to be the impact the coronavirus shutdowns are going to have on the Gold Coast Suns and AFL. So, as we all know, coronavirus is proving to be a bit of a problem, and the government's taken some drastic measures to try to manage the curve, as they like to say. Now, I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. I've heard people refer to it as similar to World War II sort of times. But we are seeing airports and travel sort of be shut down, where the government's come out and said no gatherings over 500 people. So that has forced the AFL's hand initially to ban crowds from attending AFL matches. Now, we saw that happen halfway through the AFLW, and the Suns match against the Eagles was crowdless. And it's going to be...
Well, within reason, Shane, there were family members who'd flown all the way over from Queensland and I guess other places to watch their daughters or their sisters or whatever play, and they were allowed to watch the game. So we're not talking about a massive number of people, and they were essentially, tied to the club. So there were that happened. I think the Giants game, they might have had the same sort of thing. That was reported at the game. So it's within reason. I mean, if people aren't going to be able to go and see the Suns play, AFLW team play at Southport this week, but you can take your car there and park it. As far as I know, I mean that's what people do anyway, isn't it? So
yeah, it is. And there's always
they might have some fences up.
there's all. I don't know if you've been to Southport Sharks, Tom, but there's the members bar and the restaurant. So I'm sure you could actually go into there and have a meal and look over through the big glass windows and watch the game from there. But
yeah, well, I mean that's my home club. So you know what I'm talking about. Like the grandstand isn't going to be open to the public, but they're not going to shut down the club, and they're not going to, even if they put up cyclone fencing around the sides to prevent people from getting onto the field or to make contact with the players, people will still be able to drive around and park their cars on the halfway line or whatever. So, you know, it's not 100% crowdless is what I'm getting at. If people are really keen to go, they can go, especially if they're family or friends. But yeah, look, it's one of these things where the government won't really make a decision one way or the other, and so organisations like the AFL, which sort of go right down into the junior roots of the game, they're kind of having to make these decisions, and so it feels like they're coming up every few hours, but obviously they have to have different conversations. So all Auskick, that's all done. NEFL's postponed till the 31st of May. All the state leagues, VFL, Sandford, Waffle, TSL, the Sydney Comp, they're all postponed. Yeah, and we don't know, they've extended the call until tomorrow. They're basically leaving themselves with a 24-hour turnaround as to whether the season's going to even start on Thursday night.
Yeah, it's all up in the air, and we honestly don't know if we're going to have any football to watch this weekend. I hope it does go ahead. I don't think there's a reason not to play it. I don't think it increases the risk to the players, especially if there's no fans there. I mean, I was a bit disappointed when I heard the news that no fans were going to be able to go to the football, but it sort of made life a bit easier for me. My wife was never keen on me going and being amongst thousands of people. So that it's made one element of my life a bit easier. But
I mean, and that's fair enough as well.
It's going to be difficult.
You know, there's getting there on the train, and there's being, you know, and go get a beer. So, you know, you've got 3 or 4 situations where you're at risk the whole time.
And it brings up then questions of members and what sort of compensation do they get? They paid for a product or a service that they're not going to get completely.
What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, I think to a certain element, yes, a percentage of the membership should be carried over for next year, or some sort of discounts, or even pre-play
tickets.
Even if it's pre-play credit, the service they use for the food and beverage, where you sort of prepay for all that sort of stuff, even if they give you some sort of prepay credit for that, I feel like
I don't know. I mean, it's a good idea, but I don't know if they can afford it. I would, if I was in a situation where, I mean, for me this year, because you and I have kind of put together our crowdfunding and arranged our memberships in a certain way, because that was just going to be a better thing. We couldn't afford to buy 2 full memberships out of it, so we've gone with the membership for you that has the extra tickets for me to come along, and then I'll make my own way there. So I haven't actually put a membership down. I'm planning on it, but now I'm, of course, you know what I mean? Like, as soon as it came in doubt, I postponed it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you were planning...
Money may be better off spent on rent. So I do feel for people who've supported the club and put a few $100 down, and now they might be out of work, or they might be going from full-time to part-time, or they don't have guaranteed sick pay, and if they catch this bloody thing, well, you know, the club's got their money. So I don't know. I mean, a case-by-case basis, I wouldn't be surprised if the club would take it on a case-by-case basis, where they would say, we will refund your money because you've got a good reason. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but then from a business point of view, someone's bought a product and they haven't received what they intended when they purchased it, so they are, I believe, entitled to compensation or even a refund. Yet we may not get to see a single game of football this year. That may be the scenario. Yeah. Now, me personally, I'm fine. I can deal with it. I've got enough going on in my life that the money isn't too much of an issue. I'd be perfectly happy for it to carry over for next year's membership. But for others, it is a big of an issue. They would prefer that money to help them pay for groceries, toilet paper.
Yeah,
I
mean, it's a conversation worth having, because the devil's advocate here would say that it's buyer's remorse, and they've bought something that they can't use, but it's done. And I mean, I'm not as harsh to say that, because I'm not even in that situation. But so I feel for anyone who has that situation where they wish they hadn't have committed their money. But at the same time, I think there are people who are just sort of saying, well, we deserve our money back because we're paid for tickets. And if that was the case, why didn't they just buy tickets for individual games? Or why commit to a membership? To me, a membership is more than just buying tickets. So I don't know. I think if the ticket price is what they're worried about, I think there would be an economic argument that the club should provide them with extra tickets in the future. Let's say half the season is played in front of empty stadiums, and then the rest of the season is played with crowds. Well, you were going to see 10 games, and now you're only going to see 4. And so if they give you 6 tickets to invite your friends to come along, is that acceptable?
Okay, so what if I had purchased, instead of... The problem there with that scenario is there are different levels of membership, and the only difference is the seating for those games. So, you pay more to get a better seat. Now, if that seat isn't being used, you're not getting what you've paid for. So from a consumer point of view, yes, you are entitled to some sort of I've got no problem, by the way. I believe the club will do the right thing. They have in the past. They're always trying to do stuff for members, as whether it's offering a free ice cream at games or discount on your following membership for the next year if you attend all games. They're always doing the right thing.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I've got no doubt they'll come to a satisfaction outcome that's going to help everyone. And then from the club point of view, if you think about it from their point of view, then they need the money more than ever. So yes, you probably want to give them their membership, even if you're not getting anything, because you want to support the club. So it works in both ways. It could be a case-by-case basis, but it's not going to be. They're not going to devote that amount of manpower and resources to sift through cases. It'll be a hard and fast decision on this is what you get back or this is what we can offer. And then you either have the choice to take it or to walk away and not worry about it. All right. So moving on.
No, look, I think everything you say is definitely reflective of the club. The management of the club have been making sort of strides forward. They're keeping consistent with the things that they've done in the past. They really took early action on this, as far as I'm concerned. Because for quite a while there, it looked like this coronavirus thing was something that was just a beat up by the media, but it's become a serious thing, and it's definitely kudos to the club that they have acted in the way they've acted. And as far as the AFL is concerned, well, all 18 clubs have an input on things. So, our club supports what's going on, but it's still a fluid situation. So things like memberships, when they do deal with it, it'll happen, but they're not going to rush it, are they?
No, but it probably will be the first thing on the agenda for the Gold Coast Suns Members Council. So I wonder when that's going to happen.
Are you announcing something here, Shane?
No, I don't think.
No?
I think it was yesterday, the closing date for that, but I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, so moving on, the AFL has then announced they're going to reduce the season from 22 games to 17 games. Now, this is interesting because every team will play each other once, but what makes it interesting, some say it's fair because, you only play each other once. you don't get to play the worst team twice or the best team twice. But it also adds an element of a 9-8 home and away split. So you're either going to get 9 home games or 8 home games. Now,
well, I've got a theory on that one.
Okay, go.
I've got a theory on that one, and I put it on Twitter today, and I've got quite a few people interested. So these numbers you've got here, right? So the team either has to have 9 or 8. That's how it works. They either have 9 home games or 8 home games. But if you do that, you have to make the Victorian teams have the 8 home games, and the reason for that is that there's 10 Victorian teams, but you've got Geelong, who are sort of out of town, right? So see the 9 Melbourne teams, if they play each other once, that's 8 games. So that's 8 games in Melbourne. But then the outside of Melbourne teams, which is the 9 of, if they all have to play in Melbourne once or twice, then the Melbourne teams get an unfair advantage because they're staying in Melbourne. So I think they have to unbalance things. They have to have 10 games in Queensland for the 2 Queensland teams, because they'll still have to travel all around the country. Do you know what I mean? They'll still have to go to each of the states at least once. So to make the Victorian teams travel at all, they have to have an unbalanced home and away season. And at first, the Victorian teams will cry about it, but and if they don't do that, then it's biased towards the Melbourne teams, as it always is. So they've got a chance to balance it up. I think it's good.
Yeah, so there are 8 interstate teams, and if they all get the 9 home games, then the Victorian teams are guaranteed 9 games in Victoria if we're all playing each other once, because there's obviously 10 Victorian sides. So I think that's the way it has to go. But it will be interesting to see how they fixture that and who they play. Who are the Suns going to now play up here? They've said the first 4 weeks of the season will be the same. Sorry. So what we can still expect Port Adelaide to come up here and Sydney to come up here. And we will likely have to travel down to Geelong to play them. And the other side was Fremantle. We'll have to go over to Perth. But besides that, I mean, Fremantle and Geelong, we were listed to play twice. So that's no longer going to happen. It means Fremantle's no longer going to be here. No, it wasn't Geelong. It was Sydney. Anyway, Fremantle is no longer coming back to the Gold Coast to play. So that's already one of our home games gone. It raises questions as to what happens with the game in Darwin. Are they still going to go ahead by having a Gold Coast Suns hosting a game in Darwin? And
I mean, by then we might be playing in front of crowds again. So if that's the case, then keep it, because that's the reason you do it. But they're not going to put 2 teams in planes to go that distance to play in front of an empty stadium. So it seems like in the early part of the year they are going to cancel. There's a game in Canberra and there's a game in Hobart, I think, or in Tassie. So they're looking at that. They're going, are they going to cancel that? Even the AFLW. I mean, the Kangaroos are the Tasmanian North Melbourne Kangaroos. If they make the grand final and get hosting rights, where does it get played? Again, are you going to stick 2 teams in a plane to go somewhere to play in front of nobody? So there's a lot of questions. There's a lot more questions than answers right now.
It's also going to be interesting with the Q Clash. If we're only playing Brisbane once, who gets to host that game? Because essentially the person that's the away team for that game is getting an extra game in Queensland than what their opponent would be getting.
Well, you'd imagine that they might even just have like a rivalry round where all the state-based teams play each other. So you're going to get 5 games in Victoria and a game in each of the other states against their own. If they do it all the same week, that would be a blockbuster. The rivalry round would be bloody amazing. And that means that there's, you are quite right, they get an extra home game. But I think we've got to be prepared to, we would like to think we're only going to lose 1 home game at Metricon, but at this stage, we don't even know when we're going to be going to Metricon again. And they may even, for financial reasons, they may even play games at Fankhauser Oval because it's AFL sized and it's home. You know what I mean? Do they play the Q Clash in front of zero crowd at a neutral venue that is agreeable to both teams because of the size and maybe the weather? If it's all summer we've been talking about the weather, and now we're talking about a bloody virus. But there's still a chance we're going to get flooded, Shane.
Anything can happen.
In 7 or 8 months' time, the place could be on fire. So there's anything can happen. Anything can happen. It's I think we can only really take it week to week, can't we?
Yeah. So the other aspect of only 17 games I want to highlight is I actually believe this now gives the Suns a very, I wouldn't say a very strong chance, but I think a greater chance than what they had previously to make finals this year. With the 17 games, you can imagine they're probably only going to need 8 wins to be guaranteed a spot in finals. So, considering the Suns are earmarked to get somewhere between that 6 to 8 wins ratio, there's every chance they could sneak into to play finals for the first time in their history.
Well, it's momentum, isn't it? So, if you have a 3-win season, then it means you only had momentum for those 3 wins in the early part of the season, and then you had no momentum. And you look at the Lions halfway through last year, they were in the 8, but only just. And then they had all that momentum towards the end of the season. And then they lost their momentum by losing when they had a chance at getting the minor premiership. And then they went out in straight sets in the final. So momentum is king. And if the Suns can get 3 or 4 games in a row and, not lose that momentum or regain it really quickly, we're good season starters historically. So, yeah, absolutely. There's no reason why it couldn't happen. The thing is that this virus can take momentum away because if they play 4 rounds and then they ice the season for a month, any momentum is gone, isn't it?
And I think that actually benefits the Suns with their younger playing list. It's more sprightly, extended time off. They're going to come back chomping at the bit to get out there and play, whereas the older players from other sides might take a bit of time just to get going. They're always slow starting. You look back at, say, Sydney a few years ago, they lost their first 6 games before eventually getting on to a spree to make finals. That's not going to happen this year if there's only 17 games. Not possible.
No.
Whereas a side like the Suns, who are strong starters, they could... we won 3 of our first 4 games last year. I think there was another 3 or 4 games. There were another 3 or 4 games that were lost by a kick or less than 10 points. And the only one of those games was was round 18. That was the last one of those games that we almost won, and that was against Essendon. So I think the Suns have a real chance of chalking up 7 or 8 wins in this 17-game season and really pushing for finals. So we could be really I think the benefit of all this is we are going to be talking about the Suns being contenders a lot longer in the season than what we would have in previous years.
Well, I mean, look, if we're 2-7 going into round 10, we're still a mathematical chance of making the finals, right? So, I hope we're a bit better than 2-7, but yeah, it's going to be interesting because another thing that can happen, with a 17-round season is that there could be a really clear-cut top 6 who are just, barely got any losses, and the only losses that they have are against one another, and then there could be a drop of 2 to 3 games down to that 7th or that 8th spot. So, you're quite right. An 8-win team could come 8th, but it could be a 10-win cutoff. We just don't know what's going to happen. I think the 17-round season is fair over 2 years because all the teams that we have to go and travel to, like Geelong, well, how lucky in a sense that we're playing Geelong with no crowd in Geelong.
Yeah, well, we're going to see I reckon we'll see the AFL if they keep this 17-round season. Even if they don't, with all everything up in the air, over delays, postponements, everything like that. We're going to see the AFL experiment with different times, different dates. You know, we could be watching a Suns game happen on a Wednesday night because you know, no crowd, so it's all going to be televised, and they're just trying to cram games in to get as many games done either before or after the inevitable virus suspensions that's going to happen throughout Australia. So it's going to be very interesting. We've got
45 fit players that are being under consideration for this weekend.
Yeah.
And if we have to use all of those 45 players in the middle part of the season when we are playing back-to-back games and when someone like Matty Rowell has 6 games in 5 weeks, which will happen at the best of times, right? Because it's not like they're 6 weeks apart. There's on the calendar, they all happen within 5 weeks of each other. If he needs a break, well, you bring the next guy up. And if we're finding that the side's a bit too top heavy with the rookies, then bring in a couple of veterans. You know, Harbrow's not looking like playing this week, but you know he's amazing. He's one of the first guys that I pick when I'm putting my team together each week.
I think in saying that, with the NEAFL being suspended until May, we're not going to be having games going through our reserve side. So I could quite easily see that being the time for heavy rotations on the senior side. So every week there's a good mix of different people coming through to keep everyone match fit and try and keep everyone at the same level. All right, Tom.
And if you want Holman for a certain opponent because you know that club is hard at it and you need Holman in there, but you're not going to pick Holman for 17 games, so you say he's going to play round 3 for sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like horses for courses. But yeah, we're running short on time, aren't we?
We are. So it's time for us to get going. But thanks for tuning in and listening to the GCSUNScast, whether you're listening to us live, watching us on YouTube, or you've downloaded us via your favourite podcast service. We are here. We've just had Rod Walsh jump in the chat. Geelong's home ground advantage is more to do with the dimensions of the ground rather than the crowd. Completely agree with that. And with that, that's our last comment for the night. Thanks for joining us. Go Suns.
Go Suns.